Good morning and happy Mother's Day. For some of you, today is full of joy, celebration, gratitude, memories that bring a smile to your face. For others, it's more complicated. Maybe there's loss, maybe there's distance, maybe there's longing for something that hasn't happened yet. And before we go any further, it's important to say this: God sees all of it. And one of the reasons the Bible gives us the Psalms is because they make space for all of that, all of the emotions involved in that. Today we're beginning a new series called Summer in the Psalms. And in one sense, what we're doing is really simple. We're studying song lyrics, but not just any lyrics. These are Spirit-inspired songs. You know, many modern songwriters will tell you, well, the lyrics mean whatever speaks to you, however you think it means, whatever it means to you. The Psalms do not work like that. The Psalms don't just express emotion, they actually form and shape your soul. They teach us how to worship when life is good, how to pray when life is hard, and how to trust God when we don't understand what He's doing. Because the Psalms are not just something we read, they are something we step into. And if we're honest, most of us, we don't struggle with information about God. We struggle with anxiety that won't turn off, thoughts that keep running, pressure to hold everything together, and a constant sense that we're behind or that we're not enough. We live in a world that is loud. There are loud opinions, loud expectations, loud comparisons, loud ambition. And even when everything goes quiet externally, internally, it doesn't seem to stop. So the real question for all of us today is your soul at rest? Because you can know the right theology, you can attend church regularly, you can say all the right things and still have a soul that is restless, anxious, and striving. And it's not accidental that we begin this series today, because one of the most powerful images in all of Scripture for peace, safety, and emotional security is the picture of a child with their mother. Not performing, not striving, not trying to earn anything, just close, safe, and at rest. Some of you experienced that growing up. Some of you did not. Some of you are living that out right now as moms in your own life. But Psalm 131 takes that image and points us to something even deeper, what it looks like for your soul to be at rest in God. So let's read together Psalm 131. The psalmist David writes, "Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor my eyes lofty. Neither do I concern myself with great matters, nor with things too profound for me. Surely I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with his mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forever." 3 verses. That's it. And yet, as many have said, including Charles Spurgeon, he said, it's one of the shortest psalms to read, but one of the longest to learn. Because this psalm is not just something you understand, it's something you grow into. Here's the heart of what God is inviting us into today. God invites us to move from striving to stillness by learning to rest in Him. And what David does in this psalm is incredibly practical. He shows us what a quiet soul looks like. He walks us from pride to humility, control to trust, restlessness to peace, and striving to hope. And the movement of this psalm is intentional. David begins internally, talking about the heart, the mind, and the soul. Then he gives us a picture of deep trust. And finally, he invites all of God's people into the same kind of hope. And it all starts not with circumstances, not with answers, not with everything in life finally making sense. It starts with your heart. Because before your life can become quiet, your heart must become humble. And that's the first point we see, a heart that lets go of pride. For a quiet soul in a noisy world, you need a heart that lets go of pride. We see that at the beginning of verse 1. Lord, my heart is not haughty. He's beginning with a prayer. This is not a speech. It's not a performance. This is a man standing honestly before God. Lord, my heart. He goes straight to the center of who he is, his heart. And he says, my heart is not haughty. That word haughty means lifted up, elevated, self-exalting. It's the posture of a heart that says, I've got this. I can handle this. I can do this. I don't need to depend on anyone. And in that, we hear pride. And we think arrogance, ego, boasting. But pride is much more subtle than that. Pride often looks like needing to be in control, needing to understand everything, needing life to go according to your plan. A restless heart is often a proud heart. Not because you're arrogant, but because somewhere down, deep down, you believe, I should be able to figure this out. And when life doesn't make sense, when things don't resolve, or when prayers don't get answered the way we hoped, our soul gets louder. We become more anxious, more restless, more driven. As David Gusick points out, this short psalm is a beautiful denial of pride, arrogance, and selfish ambition. And that's significant because David had every reason to be proud. Some Bible commentators suggest that this psalm may have been written when David was being hunted by Saul and he was falsely accused of trying to take the throne. Or another opinion of scholars is that when his wife Michal criticized him of being undignified as he danced before the Lord in worship. And in both situations, David was misunderstood, misjudged, criticized, and yet he refused to defend himself with pride. I mean, think about that. He was anointed king. He was successful in battle. He was respected by many, yet he says, Lord, my heart is not lifted up. Some of us are living the opposite of that right now, trying to carry outcomes, timelines, other people's decisions, unanswered questions, and it's exhausting, is it not? Not just physically, soul-level exhausting. Maybe you're tired, not because life is too heavy, but because you're trying to carry things God never asked you to carry. Well, once David deals with his heart, he moves to something just as important, that's his mind. Because it's one thing to say I'm not proud, it's another thing entirely to stop trying to figure everything out. And that's where he goes next. He's looking at a mind that releases control. Continuing in verse 1, it says, nor are my eyes lofty, neither do I concern myself with great matters, nor with things too profound for me. He now moves from the heart to the mind. And the way he says this, it's an interesting phrase, nor my eyes lofty. We don't usually speak like that, but in Scripture, your eyes often represent how you see the world, how you interpret your circumstances, or how you process what's happening around you. So when David says, my eyes are not lofty, trying to size everything up or trying to stay in control. You know what that looks like. Always analyzing, always replaying, always trying to connect the dots. Why did this happen? What does this mean? What does this mean that's going on? What if this goes wrong? How do I fix this? It's a mind that never shuts off. And then he adds, neither do I concern myself with great matters, nor with things too profound for me. This is one of the most freeing lines in the entire psalm. He's saying, there are things in life I don't understand, and I've stopped trying to master them. He's not saying I understand everything. He's saying I've accepted that I don't. As David Gusick also points out, David learned to reject selfish ambition, and he chose not to pursue things too profound for him. This includes chasing after position that God hasn't given, demanding answers God has not revealed, or trying to control outcomes God has not assigned. And this echoes a core biblical principle found in Deuteronomy 29, verse 29. The secret things belong to the Lord. There are things God has revealed, and there are things he has not. At the core of this is control. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like not knowing. We don't like not being able to fix things. So what do? Well, we try to take control mentally. But this is where anxiety lives. Anxiety thrives in the gap between what we know and what we don't know. And we try to close that gap with overthinking, overanalyzing, worst case scenarios, and constant mental rehearsal. But here's the problem. The more you try to control what you don't know, the more restless your soul becomes. You cannot have a quiet soul with a controlling mind. It's like trying to fall asleep while your mind is racing. Your body's tired, but your mind won't let you rest. You know, you try to fall asleep, but the harder you try to fall asleep, it's not going to happen. You try to force it, and the worse it gets. That's what's happening spiritually. And David says, I don't live there anymore. I don't chase what God doesn't have for me. I don't chase what God has for me, but it's not the right time. I don't try to carry what only God can hold. And maybe you're stuck in that place right there. Not because you lack faith, but because your mind is constantly reaching, striving, and trying to resolve what God has not yet resolved. There are things in your life right now, questions that won't be answered today, situations that won't be resolved quickly, outcomes you cannot control, and peace will not come from figuring them out. Peace comes when you stop trying to take God's place in your mind. Now, that doesn't mean you stop thinking or that you stop planning or that you stop caring. That can be a reaction. We just give up on all of that. No, it doesn't mean you stop doing those things. It means you stop trying to be sovereign over your life. And when David lets go of pride in his heart and he releases control in his mind, something begins to happen internally. Not automatically, not instantly, but intentionally. Verse 2, surely I have calmed and quieted my soul. He's now describing a soul that has learned to be still. That's our third point, a soul that learns to be still. Surely I have calmed and quieted my soul. Notice the language. I have calmed. I have quieted. He didn't say God did this to me. He says, I have done this. Now, don't misunderstand. This is not self-salvation. This isn't even talking about salvation. This is not self-sanctification or hey, fix yourself. This is participation with what God is doing in you already. God works in us, but we are not passive. We make choices, and we can choose to work with God who is working in us. Now, the soul. What is the soul? It's the inner life of who you are, your thoughts, your emotions, your desires, your reactions. It's what keeps running even when everything outside is quiet. Left alone, our soul drifts towards noise, fear, striving, comparison, replaying conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios. Did you know you don't have to teach your soul to be anxious? It already knows. A quiet soul is not natural. It must be trained. And we notice two words here. Both are very intentional. The word calmed and the word quieted. Calmed, it means to settle, to bring down. It's to level out. It's taking something that's all stirred up and letting it rest. And then quieted means to silence, to still, to bring to rest. This is deeper than surface calm. This is internal stillness. Think about a body of water. And when it's all stirred up, you can't see clearly. Everything is distorted in the water. But when the water becomes still, everything becomes clear. That's what David is describing. He's saying, my soul doesn't run me anymore. I don't let my thoughts spiral unchecked. I don't let my emotions dictate reality. He is shepherding his own soul, speaking to it, directing it, leading it. And this means learning to say things like, soul, slow down. Soul, God is still good. Soul, you don't have to solve this. Soul, trust him. And all throughout the Psalms, you see David speaking to his own soul. Listen, you don't stumble into peace. You shepherd your soul into it. You shepherd your soul into peace. We must choose to calm and quiet our soul. And instead of proud pursuits, David determined to find satisfaction and serenity of soul, content with God and content with God's works. And then David gives us a picture of a life that rests like a child. And this is one of the most beautiful images in all of Scripture. David, he's dealt with his heart. He has released control of his mind. He has intentionally quieted his soul. And now he gives us a picture because sometimes truth needs to be seen, not just explained. He says, like a weaned child with his mother. Not just a child, a weaned child. That detail matters because there's a difference between a nursing child and a weaned child. A nursing child comes to the mother for one reason. That's what can I get? Food, immediate satisfaction, relief. If the need isn't met, well, there's crying, there's restlessness, there's demand. But a weaned child, it's completely different. A weaned child comes to the mother for something deeper. Presence, for closeness, for proximity, security. Not frantic, not grabbing, not demanding, just resting with their mother. The weaned child has learned that the presence of the mother is enough, even when the provision isn't immediate. The weaned child has learned that the absence of a specific gift does not mean the absence of love. That's maturity as the child matures. And that's what David is saying here. This is a picture of what my soul is like with God. Immature faith demands, God, fix this, do this now, give me that right now. God, change this situation. Mature faith says, even if nothing changes, I'm still at rest in you. That's a massive shift from needing answers to trusting God, from demanding outcomes to resting in his presence. But here's what we need to understand. You don't start here. You are brought here. Weaning is a process. And if we're honest, it doesn't feel good at first. A child experiencing weaning, that's not as comfort, but that's a kind of a battle for that child to grow into become a weaned child. And for us, in a similar way, this kind of contentment doesn't come naturally. It comes through victory over what once felt necessary. What does weaning feel like spiritually? It's prayers that are not answered the way you expected. Doors closed that you wanted open. Clarity you thought you'd get, but it's not coming. And in those moments, it feels like, God, where are you? But what if that moment isn't God abandoning you, it's God maturing you? God will sometimes remove the thing you're relying on to teach you to rely on him. And there comes a point where a child realizes, I thought I needed that, but what I really needed was mom. Maybe you're in a weaning season right now in your life spiritually, and you don't like it. But because something that you depended on is gone, things are uncertain, it's no longer working the way it used to. And your instinct is to say, God, fix this. But what if God is saying, I'm not trying to harm you, I'm simply trying to draw you closer. And this is why this image matters so much today, because a good mother understands all of this intuitively. There's a difference between a child who is frantic, demanding, and inconsolable, and a child who is calm, secure, and content to be near. And every mom in the room knows the second picture, that quiet closeness, that's the goal. That's the goal, right? But even the best mother is just a shadow of something greater, because this is how God relates to his people. God is not just a provider, he is a presence. And maturity is learning that his presence is enough. Notice David says it twice here at the end of verse 2. Like a weaned child with his mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. Why does he say it twice? Because this is not easy to learn. A quiet soul is not the absence of need, it is the presence of trust. Again, Charles Spurgeon, great commentator, has a great commentary on the book of Psalms. He says this: "Blessed are those afflictions which subdue our affections, which wean us from self-sufficiency, which teach us to love God not merely when he comforts us, but even when he tries us." So let me ask you, honestly, is your relationship with God primarily about what you need from him, or is it about resting in him? And when your soul gets to that place, something begins to change in how you live. Because when you're no longer driven by pride, control, constant need, you begin to live with something steady, something durable, something that carries you forward. And David calls this hope. Verse 3, O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forever. Up to this point, David has been speaking personally, my heart, my eyes, my soul, but now he turns outward, O Israel. What God has done in him, he now invites others to do, others into. This is our fifth point. It's an invitation for all of us. A person who has been weaned from self doesn't just keep it to themselves. They begin to care deeply that others experience it as well. Hope in the Lord. Now, the word hope, it's not, I hope things work out. I hope this situation changes. That's called wishful thinking. Biblical hope is different. It is confident trust in who God is, not based on circumstances or outcomes or clarity, but based on his character. Christian hope is not confidence in what will happen, it's confidence in who God is. Now, this makes sense because what did David just show us? A soul that is humble, quiet, and resting, that kind of soul is capable of real hope. Listen, you can't live in biblical hope if your soul is in chaos, because anxiety suffocates hope. Pride distorts hope, and control replaces hope. But a quiet soul is the soil where hope grows. O Israel, hope in the Lord. Not hope in your ability, or hope in your understanding, or hope in your circumstances, but hope in the Lord. Some of you right now, your hope has been tied to a situation resolving, a door opening, or a relationship changing. And when those things don't move, your hope starts to fade, even to collapse. But notice the phrase, from this time forth, forever. If your hope is anchored in God, it becomes unshakable. And notice, hope has a starting point from this time. This means there's a moment where you decide, I am going to trust God. There's a starting point. It's not when everything changes, but right now, there's a choice. There's a decision to decide. 2, hope has a direction, and forever. This is not a mood. This is not a moment or a temporary fix. This is a new way of living. Hope begins with a decision, and it continues as a lifestyle. One last quote from Charles Spurgeon. It says, weaning takes the child out of a temporary condition into a state in which he will continue for the rest of his life. To rise above the world is to enter upon a heavenly existence which can never end. And this is where the psalm leaves us. Not with all of our questions answered or all of our problems solved, but with something deeper. A quiet soul resting in God, anchored in hope. Psalm 131 has taken us on a journey. A heart that lets go of pride, a mind that releases control, a soul that learns to be still, a life that rests like a child with its mother, and a people who are invited to hope in the Lord. And that sounds wonderful, but it also feels difficult because everything in us tends to move toward the opposite direction, toward striving, toward controlling, figuring everything out, carrying what we were never meant to carry. So here's the question. How do you actually live like this? Not in theory, but in real life, with real pressure, real uncertainty, real pain. Jesus tells us in Matthew 11, verse 28. He says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Rest. He doesn't say, "Come to me when you've figured everything out." He doesn't say, "Come to me when your life is under control, a little less chaotic." He says, "Come to me when you're tired, when you're exhausted, when you're burdened." That's Psalm 131 in the New Testament. A quiet soul, it's not something you achieve, it's something you receive from the Lord, from Jesus, because of what Jesus has done for you. Through Christ, you're fully accepted. You're fully known. You are fully secure, which means you don't have to strive for God's approval. You already have it. The reason you can stop striving is because Jesus already finished the work. Some of you are carrying things like, I need to fix this thing in my life. I need to hold everything together. I need to be enough. And Jesus says, no, you don't. You don't. Rest is not everything going your way, all your questions answered, life finally making sense. Rest is this, trusting the one who already holds it all together. That's the image of the weaned child. Not frantic, not striving, just close, just safe, just at rest. So what are you carrying right now that God never asked you to carry? What are you trying to figure out that is beyond you? Where is your soul loud instead of quiet? Right now, in your own heart, bring that thing before the Lord. That situation, that pressure, that uncertainty, and simply say, Lord, I trust you with this. Or, Lord, I'm having a hard time trusting with you with this. Help me to trust you with this. You don't need a different life to experience peace. You need a different position to move from striving to surrender, from controlling to trusting, from restless to being quiet. A quiet soul isn't found when life finally makes sense. It's found when you finally trust the one who already holds it together. Let's pray.